We never submit our deals to a lender to see whether or not the deal makes sense. We underwrite our deals to make sure that the deal makes sense before we send it to our lender. So that's how you start to build good, strong relationships with lenders, to where if a lender got to tell you whether or not your deal good or bad, you lose credibility with them.
I was searching up underwriting, and from what I got is that that's something from like the lender's perspective. So I wanted to, you said, oh, you underwrite deals. So what does that mean from your perspective?
Same thing, right? So essentially, there's an underwriting division at a lender, right? So their responsibility is, when you submit a deal, that they take it through a stress test and make sure that it's a viable deal for them to lend on based on whatever their lending criteria is. So what we do, remember all week I've been talking about how we don't learn other people's job for the purposes of doing their job. We learn everybody else's job so we can hold them accountable to doing their job appropriately as is pertaining to us. So we never submit our deals to a lender to see whether or not the deal makes sense. We underwrite our deals to make sure that the deal makes sense before we send it to our lender. So that's how you start to build good, strong relationships with lenders, to where if a lender got to tell you whether or not your deal good or bad, you lose credibility with them, right? So the way that you start to have lenders believe in your abilities is I can't tell you how many times we've even had to go improve our deals to our lenders. And that's another deeper level of respect for you, because they understand that you do the work up front. And so what happens is, even if you got a deal that's on the fringe, right, based on their criteria, they're more likely to even push that deal through, because they know how detailed and how thorough you are and how much due diligence you do on a normal basis. So it's underwriting is more of a job for a mortgage company, but as an investor, you still need to know how to underwrite your own deals. That just means evaluate the deal.
Okay, so what are good indicators, or what's your criteria for or standards for when you're underwriting a deal?
Well, it depends, right? It's kind of what I was telling Malik yesterday. You kind of have to figure out what's your best. For instance, right? There's investors that are okay with putting up money and making 12% on the deal, right? There's other investors that won't touch that same deal if it's less than 20%. And so you have to figure out for yourself, and this is legitimately just figure out for yourself how much money, like what's your minimum return on investment that you expect, depending on what type of deal that you're doing. Okay. Now, Ardell asked kind of a canned question earlier this week about like the 60, I don't even know. I think he said 62 or 67% rule. It's a 70% rule. It's right. It's all these rules, but to me, none of that stuff matters. What matters is what makes you feel good at the end of the day. Right. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's legit. Like if I'm gonna take 6 months to do a flip, and at the end of that, I'm gonna make $13,000. I don't feel good about that. I don't even need to look at the numbers. I can just tell you, right? And so that $13,000, based on how much money you got to invest in this deal, time, and all the rest of it, equates to some type of return on investment. So what you got to figure out for yourself is like, what's your appetite? What's your minimum return on investment that you're willing to accept on whatever type of investment, right? Another one could be on a wholesale deal. There may be some people that could wholesale a deal and make $2,000 and feel okay about it. There's other ones that won't touch a wholesale deal unless it's $20,000 or more. And it really is a matter of perspective. Both of them are profitable, but it's just about how one person values their time and what's their risk tolerance based on what it is that they're trying to accomplish. Okay.
Sure.
And
Sure.
and I'll give you guys this much. Inside our program, okay, we highly recommend to our students that they don't touch a flip unless it's got at least 30% gross margin to start with. So that means if your purchase and rehab was, say, if your purchase and rehab is $100,000, right? That you want to make sure that there's at least 30% in gross margin to start with. And we got to mirror the factors as to why we do that, but part of it is playing defense so that if something happened during that process and all of a sudden you got to discount that property to get out of it, you still got some meat on the bone. If you go in with slim margins up front, everything has to go perfect for you to make money, and nothing goes perfect. But investors do it every day, right? And so that's what I mean by risk tolerance. Now, does that mean that you're going to find a lot of deals that fit that criteria? Probably not. So that's why people settle for doing bad deals. But we rather wait to find the right deal before we settle for doing a bad one, what we deem to be bad. But everybody's belief system on bad is different.
My question was based on what's the difference between, because I don't know a lot of this. This is all new to me. So what's the difference between escrow and what is it? Escrow and I wrote it down. I got notes everywhere. Y'all gotta forgive me.
Okay.
My apologies. This is
No worries. Well, you want me to answer the first part while you
got stuff everywhere.
yeah,
Yes, sir.
that's fine. That's fine. So escrow is essentially a bank account that is a neutral bank account. Okay. So like you're gonna have one or two things, one or two entities that will close your transactions. One will be some of you live in states or will invest in states that you will have an attorney that handles the closing of your property. Okay. They close the transactions. In other states, you may have a title company, which is just a third party liaison that comes in to close transactions for buyers and sellers. Okay, so they're neutral. They don't have a vested interest in either party. And so what they have is called an escrow account, which is just basically a neutral bank account for funds to go into and then be dispersed per whatever the contracts are. Okay. Now,
Okay.
Title companies are businesses front facing, but the truth is they still have title attorneys no different than an attorney state, right? It's just that their business is set up to facilitate the closings of transactions as well as running title searches, et cetera. But escrow in its simplest form is just a neutral account that is not impeded on by either party. Okay. So like yesterday, when I was telling I think that was yesterday, where I was telling a story about that commercial multifamily deal where I said we sent $350,000 to escrow.
Mm-hmm.
What I meant by that was we sent $350,000 to the title company. So what happened was when the seller ended up started being funny, I didn't have to worry like, is the seller gonna give me my money back? The money was in escrow, so the title company send me my money back. You see how that works? So what it does is it prevents you from being exposed by sending money to the person that you're doing business with. You send the money to a neutral party who's keeping your money safe and making sure that it's dispersed accordingly.
Like that in the simplest form. Thank you.
Yes.
Because and my next question was equity.
Equity.
Yes.
Okay, so equity is the difference between how much a property is worth and what's owed on the property. Okay, so for instance, Willie, right? Florida Willie talked about how he's got a rental property that's free and clear. So let's just say his property is worth $100,000. Okay,
that's just the property. That's not the house.
It's the house. The house on the property. I'm sorry. Yeah. So the house and the land. So let's say it's worth $100,000. Okay.
Okay.
But because he owns it free and clear, then that means that he's got $100,000 in equity. Okay.
Okay.
Now, if there was a mortgage on that property for say $60,000, then he would have $40,000 in equity because he owes 60 and is worth 100. So that means he's got $40,000 in equity.